Guys, more leaked footage from Russia shows conscripts furiously storming off their base. We're going to break down what this means for the Russian conscript and why exactly the little things tend to make soldiers so mad. Let's get into it. Okay. So here's what's interesting, right? This is a military base. You can see there's some pretty poorly constructed fencing here. These don't even look like they're dug in. And of course, you've got gate guards here. Here's what's interesting. Watch this play out. So you can see the guards sort of put up a mild effort to try to stop them, but they just push open the gate.
Вот и всё. Красавчики!
And walk right through. The guards are like, they think, and this is confusing because these are Russian citizens, and the guards are meant to keep nefarious actors out of the base. They're not really trained to keep them in. In the U.S. military, right, we have gates, guards that guard every road leading onto the base, though they don't necessarily have fencing along the entire base perimeter. Usually military bases are too large for that. But the gate guards actually are trained primarily, right, to do security of people coming onto the base. But they do have protocols for people trying to flee. Usually what this is when you have a someone who is being pursued by law enforcement on the base, they're trying to flee in, say, a car, they almost always try to, leave the base thinking that if they can just leave the fort, that somehow the military police will just turn around and go home. But the nice thing is the military police also have radio, so they'll just radio the gate and have them erect a barrier stopping cars from leaving the base. And usually that will be enough to stop any sort of suspect from, fleeing the base. So there is a protocol for both stopping people entering the base who aren't supposed to and leaving the base who aren't supposed to. But it's much, much more restrictive for people coming onto the base for obvious national security reasons. You can see some sort of fight has broken out. Sounds like maybe one of the guards tried to stop someone. Maybe that person was leaving with some sort of gear. But what's interesting is the troops all seem to be very worked up and very willing to defend their friend. I think the sun just placed again. But what's interesting is none of these guys are leaving with gear. It seems to be some sort of organized protest. You notice they all leave. They're almost marching in like a line or in formation. And this can become increasingly dangerous, right? One of the things that's fascinating is that when U.S. border control authorities, right, will detain migrants who are suspected of entering the country illegally, they will often separate Cubans and Cuban men, The reason is because Cuban men are all military trained. They have mandatory military service. That means that they generally have the ability to self-organize and act in concert in ways that migrants from other countries often don't. And so, for example, if they feel they don't have sufficient food or that they're not being treated appropriately or that one of them is being unfairly targeted, it will be extremely normal for Cuban men to organize a hunger strike or to simply block access or just engage in collective action. And that ability to engage in collective action is terrifying, as you guys can see, right? Even if these gate guards were to choose to try to use lethal force, they literally may not have enough bullets to actually take out this group. By acting in concert, they are more powerful than any of the guards on this base. It's not clear on how they could be stopped.
Красавчики!
And that's why the guards simply realize that their only real option is to let these guys off. They don't appear to be stealing anything. But why? When we look at the caption, purportedly, These conscripts are mad about not being allowed to meet relatives as they undergo training before being sent to the front line against Ukraine. Reports said several dozen men tore down a checkpoint barrier and left the military base. This is supposedly in Kazan, another place where there was another viral instance of conscripts who talked back to a general. And this all makes sense, right? This is the level of disrespect you would show to a government that you simply don't trust, right? That you feel doesn't have legitimate authority, whose orders don't carry real weight. And it's understandable, right? Prior to a deployment, in the US, we always get 2 weeks of leave before deploying. And that is a chance to see your family, but also to, arrange certain affairs, right? You're going to be leaving the country for 6 months to a year. And for example, I gave my car to my dad, who kept it in storage and, turned it over every couple of weeks, just ensured that it was functional and properly stored. I called my bank and let them know, hey, you're not going to see any deposits for a while. This is why. I paused all my credit cards. There's just a lot of stuff that has to happen administratively, even if you're just a single guy like I was. If you have a family, for example, you might need to arrange for childcare. You might need to have your child stay with their grandparents or stay with their in-laws, right? It's possible that you may have to do things like show your wife, hey, here's how you access the bank accounts. Here's where essential documents are. Every family is going to run their lives differently and have different levels of ability to sort of pick up the slack when one member of the family unit deploys. This is really, really typical, and it is not easy to do. It's one of the biggest challenges that you face prior to deployment, right? You want to get your training right, but ensuring, in order to focus on the war, you have to believe that things at home are taken care of. And while reality always gets a vote, right? You can't, for example, tell someone, hey, don't get sick this year. That's a thing that just happens. But you can take a lot of steps to ensure that your life back home is tied down in a way that lets you focus on the fight. So the inability to do so it's understandable why these guys are so furious, right? Especially if, as you saw, mobilization felt hasty and done sort of in a impromptu way, right? Then oftentimes in training, you don't get regular contact with your family. So you may not even know if, for example, your wife or spouse or your family even knows how to pay the rent. It's not clear. Remember, if you had a job, they may not know if the rent is even being paid, right? Their family could be on the street. And then to be told you don't even get to see them would be infuriating. And it's understandable in those situations why these soldiers or trainees are choosing to take this course of action. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for you. Hopefully you get a little empathy for these poor mobilized Russians. As always, if you want the combat videos that YouTube won't let me show you, YouTube's been demonetizing quite a bit lately, you want to become a member of the Patreon. That's where all my viral combat video breakdowns are. The video breakdowns of the most intense footage. Anyway, thanks to my Lieutenant tier patrons. You guys are the ones who make this whole thing possible. I'll see you all in the next one.